For me, it was basically a case of colon cancer that almost killed me in 1988. Before that, I didn't have any interest at all in the afterlife or spirits or anything. But after facing death, I began to wonder what really happens to us after we die. And so I attended a conference in 1991 where a fellow named George Meek was giving a keynote presentation. And I think his presentation kind of changed my life. He talked about his afterlife research, including a Spiricom device that he developed in, back in the 1980s. And the Spiricom device, which he created with Bill O'Neill, it allowed, for the first time in history, for a person on Earth to talk to a person in spirit loudly and clearly through an electronic device. And George went ahead and talked about his model of the cosmos, many levels between Earth and the source, or what he called God. And he talked about his wife Jeanette, who had died the previous year and had been in contact with him in various ways. And for some reason, George's presentation was very moving to me. It made me feel emotional in ways I hadn't felt emotional before, you know. And I didn't know why I felt that way, but a week later I called him at home in North Carolina, and we hit it off very well. We really resonated. So he invited me to visit him. So I flew to North Carolina, met with George Meek, and we decided to work together. And he eventually introduced me to the Harsh Fishback couple in Luxembourg, Maggie and Jules Harsh Fishback, who are getting some of the most miraculous contacts you can imagine. I mean, I couldn't even believe it was true at first. They were getting communications through their radios, they were getting telephone calls from spirit. Spirits would plant messages in their computers when they weren't home. They were both at work. And these kinds of things boggled my mind. But anyway, I went to visit the Harsh Fishback couple and met with them. And what I saw just blew my mind. I couldn't believe it. And it was transformative for me. And I became, and that's how I got involved in ITC. So again, when I went to Europe in 1994, we had a spectacular radio contact from Konstantin Radova. He was a Latvian psychologist who died in 1974, and in the later years of his life, he did a lot of experimenting with EVP, or electronic voice phenomenon, which is basically just capturing spirit voices on tape, audio tape. He devoted years of that. He collected thousands of voices on, often under very strict laboratory conditions. So ITC is basically the use of technology to get in touch with the worlds of spirit, or the use of telephones, radios, TVs, computers, and other devices to get information from the other side. When I think of ITC, I think of the more enhanced forms of ITC, which include spirit phone calls, long radio messages, pictures of spirits coming through television, or long letters planted in computer hard drives. For this advanced sort of contact, you need a stable contact bridge, or ITC bridge, or contact field. And that depends on resonance. It's not so much the resonance of the equipment as it is the resonance of the people on Earth, the minds of the people on Earth being resonant with the people in spirit. And for that kind of resonance, you need attitudes like trust, goodwill, friendship, positive attitudes that allows the vibrations to be resonant on both sides. It's similar to what you have in a modern electronic device that might have a transmitter and a receiver in the same box. You have to fine-tune the transmitter and the receiver so that they vibrate in harmony very closely. And that's the same thing that happens with ITC, but it's the minds of the people on both sides of the veil that have to be in harmony. When we try to verify something on Earth, we usually use the scientific method, which is really wonderful for checking the validity of something with our world, with our physics. But there are a couple of things in the scientific method that don't work well for ITC contacts. One of them is the conditions that we set for the contact. Another is the hypothesis, or the prediction that we make on what kind of results we'll get. The trouble is that our spirit friends live in a different world with different physics. They don't have the sense of time and space that we do here in our world. So if we try to set up an experiment in which a contact will happen at a particular time at a particular location, it's going to be very difficult for our spirit friends to accommodate because it doesn't fit their conditions. Their main condition is resonance. Not so much the resonance of the equipment, but the resonance of the minds of the people on Earth and the people in spirit. With those sorts of enhanced contacts, it requires a very stable contact bridge or communication bridge, or contact field, they call it, in which the minds on both sides of the bridge have to be resonant. And then if you achieve that resonance, then communications can open up between their world and ours. In order to have that kind of resonant bridge, you have to have attitudes such as friendship, trust, goodwill, love. These kinds of thoughts resonate very well with each other. And if everyone in the room, if everyone in the ITC project resonates with those thoughts at the moment, and our spirit friends automatically resonate with those thoughts because that's the world they live in, then the communications can happen. But if you have, on our side, if you have skepticism or doubt or fear or some animosity between researchers, that's going to break down the resonance and the contacts won't be able to happen. So that's why with the scientific method, you have to take that into account in order to make the contacts happen. If you don't, then it's just not going to work very well. ITC contacts are very hard to verify unless our spirit friends do the verification. And we can use the scientific method, but it's not going to work. We have to learn to resonate with each other. And if science can take that into account, if they can establish an experiment where the people involved in the project resonate with each other, also the scientists involved in the project are not skeptical. They have to also believe in the project. They have to understand the spiritual nature of the project and know that it can work. Then that group will be able to work with spirit, and then maybe science could start creating conditions and hypotheses and predictions of how the experiment will come out. In the meantime, it'll always be up to the spirit to decide whether these contacts happen. And as long as that's true, skeptical science in its modern form probably will not accept ITC as it is. The most effective way for communication to happen is when spirit decides how and when. The conditions have to be right from their perspective. I mean, if we want to contact a particular person on the other side, a person in spirit, it can help for us to want that because it'll get the attention of that spirit. But in order for them to make contact, it'll depend on how resonant we are with that spirit at the time. they can only come through if we happen to resonate with them. And so it's usually the spirits who decide who to contact and when. There was a researcher in Germany, Adolf Holmes, who set up a very interesting experiment. He worked with a physicist named Ernst Sinkowski, who was a very discerning, intelligent man, but he was also interested in this ITC contact field that we were working on. So Adolf Holmes set up an unlisted phone line in his house for a period of 2 months. And it was to be used only for dedicated spirit phone calls, no other phone calls. So during that 2-month period, Adolf received 4 spirit phone calls and no other phone calls on that line. And at the end of the 2 months, the phone company sent him reports saying, there were no phone calls made on your telephone during that 2-month period. So that was very enlightening and verifying information for us, because it confirmed our theory that spirit is not out there in space somewhere. Spirit is right here with us. And when it comes to work with our equipment, the spirits work right with our equipment. They're right in the room with us. They don't have to come through the public network, through the public telephone network to make the contact. So that's why Deutsche Telekom did not recognize any phone calls coming through the public line to that line. The spirit phone calls were made directly to the equipment by the spirits. Okay? I know for a fact that all these ITC contacts I'm talking about are legitimate. They're not a hoax, they're not fraud. But there are 2 caveats to that have to be mentioned. Whenever you get a lot of people involved in a group, there's going to be some lying and cheating and stealing going on. That's part of human nature, okay? And when I say that all the ITC contacts I'm talking about are completely legitimate, you've got to take into account that there's always a little bit of lying, cheating, and stealing going on in human groups. That's not just ITC groups, it's also scientific groups, it's also religious groups. All groups have some amount of lying and cheating and stealing going on. Every person has a little bit of lying and cheating and stealing going on. It's just the way human nature is. But at the center of all of these things, at the center of all of these people, there's an honest core. There's a core of honesty and truth, okay? And it's that honest core of ITC that I know is 100% legitimate. Just as I know that there's an honest core of science that is 100% legitimate. And there's an honest core of religion that's 100% truthful and honest. There's an honest core of every person that is truthful and honest. That is the bottom line. And then my second caveat would have to do with skepticism. I mean, whether or not ITC is a complete hoax depends entirely upon how skeptical you are. If you believe completely that there are no spirits, there is no afterlife, then yes, ITC in your mind is a complete hoax. And you might not change your mind, even with the best evidence there is out there. Hard physical evidence will not convince you that ITC is not a hoax. You might not change your mind until after you die. And even after you die, you might be skeptical. Our spirit friends told us that they have skeptics on their side, and people who lived on Earth and didn't believe in the spirit world, now they live in the spirit world and they don't believe in Earth because they think it's just a bad dream. So skepticism is persistent. So those are 2 caveats I'd say. I believe ITC is totally legitimate. at its core. It's not its core, but there are those two caveats. We have to realize that there are trillions and trillions of spirit beings throughout the cosmos, and almost all of them communicate mind to mind. We on Earth have kind of lost that ability to speak mind to mind for various reasons. We prefer speaking with words and sentences, languages and images. And it's a real challenge for them in spirit to communicate to us for that reason. We don't communicate mind to mind the way they do. So a lot of times they have to, they find it easiest to communicate with our world through a psychic channel. And because they can speak mind to mind with these guys. And what happens during channeling is the mind of the psychic becomes a transformer and also a filter for the information coming through. And it's the mind of the experimenter that transforms the thoughts, of the clear thoughts from spirit, into words and languages and pictures that we can see and understand in our world. And if a psychic channel happens to be going through a difficult time with a lot of stress or a lot of emotional upheaval, that can skew the message that's coming through so it doesn't come through very clearly. And for that reason, people are a little suspicious of psychic channeling. But if you have a good, clear channel who is at peace with themselves and is attuned to finer spirit, the information can come through very clearly. It can be world-changing information that is absolutely wonderful. Now, when we talk about ITC, it's a very similar process. You have the experimenter on this side, along with his equipment, and you have the mind-to-mind communication in the spirit world. And we send their information to our world. It comes through the mind of the experimenter, and somehow it's transformed and filtered, and it also is impinged into the equipment. So it comes through as voices and text and images that we can understand on Earth. So it's a very kind of a contrived way for them to communicate with us on Earth, only because it's so difficult for us to communicate mind to mind. They try so much to get through to our world. They use psychic channeling all the time. Thousands of people across the world channel information psychically, because that's the easiest way for them to communicate with our world. It's mind-to-mind communication. That's the way they communicate. For them to transform their clear thoughts into our words through our equipment is a very difficult project.